So today we are live in our Facebook group and we are on the Foodie Proof You podcast. And I've got a brand new guest with us today, Dr. Suresh Kumar. And Suresh is from New Jersey and he's actually a colleague, entrepreneurship professor. And I would like, Suresh, can you introduce your family to us, your kids, and then introduce your job, please?
Certainly, Julian. First, thank you for inviting me to your podcast. It's a very interesting topic. I've not come across any other podcasts specifically with dads, so that's great. I am an Indian American, so which means I was born and I grew up in India. I
Mm-hmm.
came to the US in '91 for
Yes.
work, and I came in to work as a bank executive on Wall Street. I After some initial difficulty, I fell in love with the freedom and the entrepreneurial mindset that's quite common in the US. And I decided to become a citizen. So, approximately 10 years later, I became a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I started my first venture as an entrepreneur in 1999. And after that, I've had a bunch of different ventures. So, I've invested in a few. I've been fortunate to be listed among the Inc. 500 fast-growing firms 5 times and once on the Deloitte Fast 50.
Nice.
And that's all, thanks to the great teams that I've been with. I've been married and I live with my wife of 15 years now.
Nice.
And
Congratulations.
thank you. And my son, who's 9 years old. So yes, I'm a dad, and I'm proud of that title.
Excellent. What's your boy's name?
His name is Yuvraj. That's
You.
Yuvraj, and that means a
Excellent.
young prince in the Indian language.
Ah, perfect. My daughter's name is Saya, and her nickname is Hime, which means princess in Japanese. So
Wonderful, wonderful. I think
maybe they should.
that's exactly right. We'll plan on that.
um, Before we get into that, I'm really interested by what you said that you fell in love with entrepreneurship, and you kind of, I think the word fell into what was on purpose because you said it was through hardship, right? What got you started in that entrepreneurship journey?
So initially, the reason why I kind of did not seek it. It kind of came to me because one of the challenges I found working on Wall Street is that it never is a 9 to 5 job,
Yeah.
although that's what they say. Always is 12 to 18 hours that you're working from the moment you wake up and the late nights that you come in. You really don't have time to do any other thing in your life. And what I realized is that the time was something I didn't have control over. And therefore, a lot of my other interests I was never able to pursue because of my job. And that's when I realized I've got to really do something to get away from that and take back control of time. That's one of the things that drove me into entrepreneurship.
I love it. I love it because a lot of people will think entrepreneurship will be too much time, too much work. But I've interviewed a lot of dads who fell into entrepreneurship and found out that was the best way to actually, exactly what you said, take control of your time, and the best way to actually live in harmony with their family. But you went the hardest way. Like you went from Wall Street where you have zero life, and you realize entrepreneurship might not be that hard compared to this.
Well, that's what I thought. But frankly, the
Yeah.
first maybe 3, 4, 5 years is even more time. You're actually spending
Mm.
pretty much every living second of your life
Yes.
is on that startup, especially if you go through a difficult phase,
Yeah.
which I went through, because immediately after I formed my company, I went through 9/11, which took away a large segment of my customers who were in New
Yes.
York City. And
Yes.
but it's through that hardship that I really learned a lot. It was kind of
Yeah.
it's like doing an MBA supercharged uh, during a short period of time. When you go through a lot of difficulty, that you learn more because you're forced to innovate and do things differently.
super quickly.
So it was, entrepreneurship was not easy. So the control of time, frankly, came in later on, maybe about 5, 6 years down the line, uh, where I
I
was
like the
able
timeline.
to build a company, have a team, get to a few $1 million of revenue base. That's
Mm.
when you really get some breathing time. So it's not easy. So I want to caution viewers who may think that it is an easy road. The first many years is not.
And did you do it while you were still having a job, or did you do it full time?
Well, for the first about maybe 6 months to a year, I
Yeah,
did both in parallel, but then I switched over when it
yeah.
came to a point where I really needed to be full time on the job. I had to make that switch.
Did you have revenue when you made it full time, or did you
Yes, we
jump?
started we
Okay.
started making revenue, and but I was not able to take out a salary though for
Sorry, it's
maybe
different. Yes.
we start we had revenues to maybe pay some of the employees, pay the rents, but not enough for the founders to take a salary. So it did take a few years before I
Yeah.
could get onto the payroll.
And I'm assuming you didn't have your young prince when you were starting.
Oh no, not at all. I was all by myself, which in a way was good because
Yeah.
when you're through the rough times, it's difficult to also have a family and invest time in them. So at that time I was single.
So now back fast forward to 2020. Why do you have a focus on still running your entrepreneurial spirits? I mean, and you're a professor in entrepreneurship and innovation, and at the same time spend time with your boy and your wife.
Well, that's a kind of a complicated question, but
Yes.
the short answer is once you kind of drink uh, the Kool-Aid, so to speak, of entrepreneurship, it is difficult to let go because it's in your blood. So once you
Mm.
have done a startup, then it's a question of what next. So even if you build a company and sell it, it's difficult for an entrepreneur who's been through that creative process and who's built teams and build relationships to kind of just sit back and relax. That's the reason why you see a lot of people who build a company, exit, then start
A new
many
one.
other companies, right? So they kind of keep going because they have ideas. The mind is always working. Not only the mind, the hearts are also working. So you're looking at where you can contribute, where you can add value.
Mm.
So that leads you from one to the next to the next, and that kind of led me down the path of not only building companies but also learning the theory of entrepreneurship, helping me get a PhD, and then teach entrepreneurship.
Okay, and so when did your family life came in a balance, and why did you want to have that balance with your family? Because being a professor in entrepreneurship can be very busy too, right?
Right. Actually, professor in entrepreneurship came just recently, just about
Mhm.
4 or 5 years ago. I started my family life in 2005.
Yes.
So that's now 15 years. So that's at a point where my company was stable enough
Mm,
that I had some breathing time because I had a team in place and I had a core group of 5, 6 people who was kind
yes.
of running the company with me. And I was able to delegate enough to them that allowed me time to step away and maybe think of getting married.
Yes. Sorry, taking notes here. All right. So for the dads on the call here who are running a business or are thinking of running a business while still being involved with their family, what are the secret weapons that you are currently using and that are kind of working for you? We're all learning here, right?
Yes. So I want to first disclose that I'm no means an expert. My wife would say that perhaps I'm still a learner, a beginner. So with that, ha- having said that, I would still like to maybe share some of the things that has maybe helped me. So I think the first thing I would say is that know who you are. So if you're able to acknowledge who you are and you're comfortable with it, that's when then you're comfortable being that same person with your wife and your son and the friends and family. I think that's a good starting point. uh, Next to that, I think it is important to have trusted relationship in your family life as well as at work. So I think it's an extension of, once you know how to build,
Mm.
grow trust in the business, you can
Yeah.
kind of do the same thing on a family side too. So it could be with your wife, with your son. Pretty
Mm.
much, I use the same principles of how do you build trust, and how do you grow it. Once it's broken, how do you repair trust? So these are some of the fundamental factors that you learn in a business context that you can also
And then
apply,
you can
and
apply it.
vice versa too. Sometimes you learn it from home and apply it
I
at
love it
work.
when it's home and work. Let's go back to know who you are, because it's such a simple statement, but it's not a simple step. How did you get to know who you are?
Um, I, I think it's not something that comes all of a sudden. It starts right from, I guess, when you're very, very young. Um, you get you feel confident. You kind of, you're rooted in something, and it's
Yes.
not necessarily in a religion or a race or ethnicity. You're rooted in some values. And I think once that value system is in place and you know what those are, whether you are, whichever country you are in, and that's the reason why I felt very comfortable moving from India to the US, because the value systems that I was involved in my
Mhm.
family and friends were kind of similar.
Okay.
So, and which is one of the reasons why many Indian Americans do well, people who come from India do well here, is because the the culture and values are kind of similar in many ways.
And but will you say that you thought you knew who you were when you were working for Wall Street, and then you realize you knew you wanted to take back control? Those are like very strong. These are ways to know yourself, right? I mean, you could have kept on going on that journey of burning out yourself, basically.
You're right. So, and this is the feeling I got. I came in to build a career on Wall Street because I was on a fast track
Hmm.
in the executive line in a bank which you may be familiar with, called ANZ Bank.
Yes,
Yes,
Australian New Zealand Bank. Okay.
that's right. That's right. So I was on the fast track, which is why I was sent into the US. But I kind of soon realized that this is not what I'm here. Although I was doing well in that career,
Yeah. Yeah.
very soon I got the feeling that this is not why I've been sent onto this earth.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
right.
when I started looking at options. And that's what again led me, in a way, the career helped because it gave me certain skill sets, confidence, knowledge, and
Mhm.
relationships, which all really helped me later on in my career.
It's such a daunting moment, though, right? When you realize this is not what I was meant to do. Like, this is not what I was put on earth to do, and then do something about it. And you decided to go, okay, I'll just start a business. I'll just register a company. All right, moving to um, building trusted relationship. What are some of your tips of actually building such relationship? And you said, you can do that at work and then bring that at home, and then learn how to do that at home and then bring it at work. What are some of the way that you build trusted relationships?
That's an excellent question, Julian. So there are, I would say, a big chunk. I would say trust is like an iceberg. So you see a bit of it above water, but the huge part of it is underwater, which you don't see. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the character of the person, right? So it's things like, do you keep your commitment? Do you follow through?
Yes.
Uh, those are the things which kind of builds the trust, which is not seen. So therefore, that's the reason why building trust takes time, because you need to know what is underground that you cannot see when you first meet a person. You get to know it over a period of time. Then there are some things that is visible, which is, for example, competence, right? So
Mhm.
skills, expertise, all those things are more visible and it's easier to measure. But the big chunk of it is unseen, which you really need to dig deeper. Uh, and once you are able to do that, that's when you really are able to build trusted relationships. So I would say character and competence are two critical elements of building trust.
So would you say that while you're building relationship with your wife and your son, with your son, are you also embedding those competencies and those skills in him at the same time?
Well, I kind of do it in a, um, I would say, in a silent way, in the sense I don't lecture him on this. I
Mm-hmm.
would rather show him
Yeah.
by example that this is how I would do something, and I would encourage him to think, and maybe I'll give him some reasoning for that. For
Yes.
example, if a small thing as following through on a commitment, if I see that he's not doing that, if he had, for example, I and he had agreed that he's going to take out the garbage 2 times a week and put it
Yeah.
out in the curb, and if he does not do it, that's when maybe I'll bring up the topic, and I'll ask him as to what's going on, right? So I kind of do it in subtle ways, and I hope he will get the message.
The garbage is still here. What happened?
That's right.
This is how it starts. No, that's excellent. So basically saying, so know who you are, and from there, build relationship at work and at home. Excellent. And I love the example with the garbage bins. Any other secret weapons that you use and then that are working with you?
Yes, one thing that has helped me maybe more at work than at home would be the concept, which I think Wayne Gretzky, one of the great ice hockey greats of the US, said once, is that don't skate to where the puck is right now, but skate to where the puck will be in a few seconds. Right. And that kind of principle basically applies to life, whether it's at work or home. The same concept that try to move forward and try to anticipate where the action would be in life. So it could be in acquiring new skills, it could
Mhm.
be in business transactions, or even a relationship move. If you're moving forward towards where the action would be, uh, and if you can do this continuously more often than not, I think you would end up being having a better relationship all around.
And here you're not saying to live in the future, right? I mean, you're saying you need to live in the present to understand the present so well that you see what's required and where it's going. Is that what you mean?
Exactly right. Exactly right. So you need to be anticipating what is happening right now, not what
Mhm.
happened in the last second or the last few minutes or hours in your life. It's got to be what's happening right now so that I can anticipate and take action.
Yeah.
And that's a principle that I've tried to follow at work and even on my personal career. And
Mm.
I'm trying to do it in the family too.
Do you want to share a recent example of how you've been implementing this at work, for instance?
Yeah, certainly. So, for example, I would let me give you an example at my uh, how I moved from being an entrepreneur to being a professor.
Yeah.
So I kind of was involved as a mentor with the different universities like Columbia University, etc.
Yeah.
And so there I came across opportunities where there were big gaps in the education system, where they were not having practitioners who could teach entrepreneurship, right? It was mainly done by people who knew the theory of it, but who
Yeah.
have not actually run a company or run a payroll. So, and that's a big gap. So when
Yeah.
I realized that such a gap exists, then I kind of started moving towards exploring options, and that's how I did my PhD,
Mm.
and that led me to opportunities, which right now that's what I do. So that's one example of how I saw the puck moving, and I kind of skated towards where it is now.
And I like it because it's definitely the entrepreneurial mindset, right? It's like looking at where the opportunities are, where the gaps are, getting ready for it, developing your own product, which is you doing your PhD. And I have to say, I can relate, right? I mean, this is also the reason I started teaching in the MBA program at my university where I was working, and realized this was so much fun because as a practitioner, it is so much easier to interact with the students because they realize that you've got the theory and you've got the stories that go with it, the
Correct.
experience. But then you have to do the PhD.
That's right. So I think the perspective is important, and that perspective comes only if you have done that before, right? And that's something students really appreciate. And I
Yeah.
found that even as a mentor, that's what they really appreciated when I was able to get into the classroom and talk to them about realities that they may not have thought through. So that's what I meant by saying if you could anticipate what's going on and make a move towards it, that'll kind of help you get to where you would like to be.
Yeah. And I think by being so proactive, by understanding where the gaps are, you're also learning so much on what's working, what's not working, which actually help you have that perspective that you can then share with your students.
Absolutely, you're right about that.
So I'm interested, your current students, because I facilitate entrepreneurships with MBA students, so they're mature students. Are yours undergrad or mature?
I do both. So you have both undergrad and graduate students.
So the graduate students, do they have kids? Because that makes a really big difference, right?
Some of them do. As you know, in the US, education is lifelong. So you have people who sometimes go work for many years, come back to college.
Yeah.
So you have a few people who are older. So it's kind of a mixed bag of people of ages. And that kind of helps because you have then a classroom where you have people with different backgrounds, work experiences. So when I have a class and they form teams, I try to mix up these people with different experience and backgrounds, and that makes the teams better.
And do you see? So it clearly makes a better team with that diversity of experience. But do you see that the one with kids are behaving differently? Like, do they have a better motivation, or do they have more resilience? Or I'm not trying to put the answer in your mouth, but
So I wouldn't say resilience, but I would say certainly things like patience and understanding. So, for example, if you want to build a product, if you have kind of what it is to talk to a small child and understand their perspective, that's a big help when it comes to doing that with customers, because in many cases the customers they behave like children, and if you're able to kind of dig deeper and understand exactly what they need, it's kind of the similar skill that is required. So I think that's something that helps being a
I, li-
parent.
I like it. I like it because you're using the word patience to have the patient with the customers.
That's correct.
Because sometimes the customers don't know what they want they cannot express it themselves, and you
Correct.
really have to help them understand who they are and what they want themselves. I like it. I was not thinking about it that way, but it's funny. It's so true. It's really true. Whereas if we don't have kids, or if we're younger, we're so impatient and we don't understand why the customer is not jumping on board right now.
Right. And that
Maybe
this
it's for
happens a
you.
lot. This happens a lot for startups, right? You
Yeah.
have people who have got great ideas, and then they wonder as to why is the customer not able to understand that my
Yes,
product
it's
is
so
so good,
obvious.
so good.
You should be
So
lining up.
so I think understanding that perspective of the customer helps if you've done it in a family context. So
Mm,
and also it kind of helps the other way too. If you've done it with customers, then you're able to maybe
yeah.
do it better with your children. So
Yes.
it kind of
It,
cuts
it
both ways.
it goes back to having empathy, and
Yeah,
I think before the we run live, we were talking about emotional intelligence. I think it goes back to that. If you have that empathy, that emotional intelligence with your customers, then you can transfer it to your family, and vice versa.
absolutely. So the basic concept being, if you're able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else
Yeah.
that you're trying to understand, then things are going to get much better.
Yes. This is a tough one, because it takes time, right? I mean, that level of empathy, of understanding what are the behavior of that person, what are the needs and the wants of that person. It takes a lot of humility.
Yes, it does.
So, do you want to share with us your last segue weapon for us? I think we were talking about IQ and EQ, and you came up with another one which I didn't know. Do you want to mention that one? Give us some
Yes.
examples.
So I think you mentioned the word resilience in the earlier conversation, and it's kind of along those lines. There is this idea called adversity quotient. So it's kind of on par with the other quotients, all of which are important, IQ, EQ, etc. So adversity quotient is basically a measure of how would you deal if you were in a difficult circumstances, and how would you overcome, how would you stick on to the task and get it done. That is adversity quotient. So that is something, again, that really is built up right from when you're very young. And that is something, though, that's extremely critical in terms of your work from a professional side, and also on the family front. So
I love it.
that's,
I love it
yeah,
because we really have an impact. That's, as parents, we can really help our kids build this. I mean, this is testing them all the way, like helping them, but also helping them solve things on their own, not always doing everything for them, right?
absolutely. And that involves things like, for example, forcing them to go outside their comfort zone, right?
Yes.
So children, if they are left to themselves, generally tend to do things that they're comfortable with. For example, they will be with their circle of friends, they will play the same video games that they're comfortable with. They may not go beyond that. So for that, they've got to be pushed to do something, right? So getting them out of that comfort zone, I think, is the most important thing a parent can do.
Yeah.
And if they keep doing it consistently, then that builds confidence, and it builds resiliency among children, where they feel, okay, that I can go and play with a kid who's older than me, or I
Exactly.
can do a sport that is a little bit more risky.
Yeah.
So it's kind of encourage them to take risks,
Yeah.
uh, and it is okay to act even when all the facts are not known. Right? It's a basic thing entrepreneurs do.
Yeah. Yeah.
children
Exactly.
children don't do it naturally, right? So you've got to kind of give them the support, saying that it is okay, you can go and take risk. It's okay to fail, it's okay to fall, just get up and do it again, right? So that's what builds resiliency, and that's what I meant by the adversity quotient.
So what I like here is, again, in my mind, when you were talking about this, I'm thinking about my son, Tayo. When he was 6 years old, he really enjoyed music and he enjoyed street musicians. So I encourage him to go on street and play as well, right? And you should have seen his eyes were like, "What are you talking about, Dad?"
Right.
And but now he goes every weekend. He's 10, and he's invited a friend of his, and so they play as a band on the street, and it becomes so natural for him. So this morning he was talking about what everything he needs to do in order to go into to book a recording studio and record his first album. I'm like, what happened in this past 4 years? Because you build that adversity quotient, and it just keeps on building, and it just, wow, they become more and more confident, and they start taking risk on their own, and it's just
Correct.
beautiful to see.
So it kind of builds on its own. I think it's initially the first few steps that you really need to
That's
push
right.
them to. And
That's
after
right.
that, it kind of builds. And once you have the basic confidence, then they take the next step and the next step. So that's exactly what your son has done. And I'm glad that you forced him to go out and sing in the street, because who knows, one day he may be a great singer known all over the world.
Oh yeah, or just that, or just the for us, for entrepreneurs and professors, it's really important to be able to communicate to an audience, right? So being on the street is the best way to communicate and to beat that fear. And so being self-confident just really helps you so much. And if it does become a rock star, then that's an added bonus.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much, Suresh. That has been so much fun. It's been really good, like mixing your life as an entrepreneur, your life as a dad, and then now your life as a professor in entrepreneurship, and all that started from you being in Wall Street and realizing this was not me. I want to take back control of time. I love that. I'm going to
Correct.
reuse that line. So, Suresh, what do you want to leave the audience with, and then where can we reach you or follow you?
Well, maybe a parting message would be, again, I'll come back to time being perhaps the most valuable commodity that any one of us have, and how you take control of it would determine not only your success but also how happy you would be in your life, right? So because once you take control, you can do other things with time that perhaps is more in keeping with who you are.
Yes.
And therefore I would maybe as a parting message say that if if you realize this secret, then it becomes easier to plan your life and do other things with it. And one other parting thing would be, as a professor, my job is to share knowledge. So I would encourage your viewers to also share as much as they can, in whatever context they are in, uh, because knowledge is perhaps the one of the only things which grows the more you share it. So perhaps you may want to think of doing it, whether it is in the context of your work or in your family. You may want to share those things, whatever you're passionate about, so that others can take it, grow, and run with it.
I love,
So
uh,
that's pretty much the what I have to share. I can be found, by the way, on LinkedIn, so I'm happy
yes.
to.
So okay, so I'll put the links in the show notes. But it's looking. I'm just gonna remove the banner here. So it's looking for Suresh Kumar.
Yes,
And we'll find you. That's awesome. I really like what you just said about sharing knowledge, because as we know as facilitator, the more we we talk about the knowledge, the more we actually learn it ourselves. That's what you mean by we grow knowledge, right? I mean,
that's correct.
explain it to students who are not getting it straight away, like, okay, how I'm going to put it. But what I've been doing with my students and my clients recently is to get them to talk about their knowledge on LinkedIn and on videos, and to share
Mhm,
that with short
mhm.
videos. And I realized, wow, they were just growing because they were getting more confident about sharing that knowledge. They were interacting with people who wanted to know that. So it's getting easier and easier now to share a knowledge on social media. And once you do that on social media where you can practice, then it gets so much easier to do this at work with our workmate.
I agree with you. So, in fact, I also use social media quite a lot in my classrooms. I ask students to go out and introduce themselves to somebody in social media, and get a contact, and then reach out to them and talk to them, right?
Uh,
So I kind of I kind of structure it in a way that their probability of success is higher by
yes.
giving a nice message about themselves, having a nice profile for themselves, asking the right question.
Mm.
And most people actually like to mentor. They just need to be asked, would you
That's right.
like to be my mentor? Right?
Yes.
And that's something many students hesitate in asking, that one question. But that could be that one question that could really change your life. If you get the right mentor at the right time, your career could go in a completely different direction.
100%. That's beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I hope we can do that another time. I really, really enjoyed that, Suresh. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian. I appreciate the opportunity, and good luck.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
And the